This is my home gym, Japan, that I bought for around 950 euros, and honestly, even though it has a few issues, it's been absolutely great thus far, especially for the price. For more context, I recommend watching my previous home gym video of the one that I built in Estonia, where I also talked about whether or not you should actually get a home gym, as well as what the entire home gym experience is like. But the reason I built a home gym also here in Japan was to save time, money, and so that I'd be able to train without any restrictions. Essentially, the commute to the nearest gym took me 1 hour on foot, then another hour back, and if the gym was even a little crowded, I could easily spend over 2 hours there considering I had a lot of exercises to go through and had to wait for others without being able to superset. There also were certain restrictions, such as being allowed to use a single piece of equipment for only 20 minutes, which for me just isn't enough when it comes to something like 5 sets of maximum effort squats, including warm-ups, and regardless, the prices of gyms here are so expensive that after 12 months, you almost paid the same price as you'd pay for a home gym, especially in my case, as I went to the gym with someone who also had to pay their own contract separately, so it made a lot of sense just to build a shared home gym instead. So after looking around for a while in secondhand marketplaces, I realized that it's much easier and even cheaper to buy everything from Amazon or Rakuten instead, as not only do they have free delivery, but also the ability to refund whatever necessary, which I actually had to do once. But anyway, let's start with the power rack. It cost me 220 euros, and it also includes tip handles, a T-bar row attachment that I never use, and even a cable station that at first I was a bit worried about as I wasn't sure how good quality it was going to be. And while it definitely isn't the smoothest cable station I've ever used, it's completely usable and I use it constantly for various different exercises, including tricep pushdowns, Bayesian cable curls, lateral raises, face pulls with a rope that I found lying around, heavy cable curls, and so on. You can even use it for doing lat pull downs, but in my case, I'd need something that will properly pin my body down, as otherwise I'll just end up doing pull-ups. Speaking of pull-ups, I actually didn't buy a weight belt, but I was able to DIY a ghetto solution for doing weighted chin-ups, but I think buying an actual weight belt will still be a way better option. One of the complaints I have about this rack though is that it doesn't have that many holes, and when doing squats, I have to face the opposite way because otherwise the bottom support beam as well as the cables get in the way, and be careful not to accidentally sit on top of these sharp metal edges when you fail a squat because the depth of this rack is quite shallow. The safety bars are simple to the extent that they don't even have anything to prevent them from sliding unless you use these included tiny clips, but they get the job done, and so do the J-hooks. But the design of the J-hooks is kinda bad because they don't have a back wall, so re-racking a heavy barbell feels a bit uneasy because it's going to hit the top of the J-hook most of the time. But other than that, all the max weight capacities are more than enough for me, and for the price, I really don't have any further complaints, but I must warn you that while building it, tiny, needle-like metal shards kept falling on the floor, and they can stab your foot if you happen to step on them. As for the barbell, I bought it off Rakuten with an included weight set, and they're both totally fine. The rubber weights did smell a bit at first, but I've seen worse, and by now, multiple months later, I can only sense the smell when doing neck curls, which does make me feel sorta sick. But that's probably first and foremost because of the neck curls. I also bought some bumper blades off Amazon because not only did I want to try having bumper blades at my home gym, but also because they had the cheapest price to weight ratio, and while they're definitely stable on the floor, they're also honestly a bit annoying to move around because of how massive they are without having a handle. But my only real complaint about them is this awful noise they make when loading them onto this specific barbell. Once I did it fast and it literally hurt my eardrums, and everyone in a 2-kilometer radius will be able to hear you loading or removing these plates even if you try to do it slow, but at least they don't smell, I guess. Just like in my last home gym, I also bought some loadable dumbbells, and this time I went with ones that had a shorter loadable part so they wouldn't bump into each other that much, but that also makes them a bit harder to load heavy, which is why I wish that instead the handle was the thing that was shorter, But other than that, they work perfectly fine, and they even came with these fancy metal clamps that were in this foam packaging, which I now use during neck curls, as well as things such as weighted decline sit-ups. And for both of those, I'm using this bench, which honestly for the price is really good and easy to use considering how easily adjustable it is. But my only problem with it is that the feet aren't very wide, so it's not the most stable bench in the world, especially with this soft foam flooring, which was pretty much the cheapest flooring I could find. Considering that I went with a 5 cm thick rubber flooring that cost me a fortune back home, I wouldn't really recommend foam mats like this as they are easy to damage, are rather unstable due to the softness, leave marks behind depending on what you put on them that can take a few days to rebound, and they can also be slippery, so I ended up getting weightlifting shoes just to do squats. But on the other hand, they're cheap, they don't smell, and honestly, well, they're not that cheap, but they get the job done as long as you're careful about not dropping weights. When deadlifting, I'd still recommend using at least some wooden boards to spread out the impact, but personally, I'm not deadlifting here at all, already because there is literally nothing beneath the floorboards, and I also prefer Romanian deadlifts for the time being, which can also be done without any noise or risk whatsoever. Also, eventually, I got tired of having to pry the bumper blades off the floor and all the weights being in the way, so I bought these 2 weight holder attachments for the rack so I could actually store the weight somewhere, and they worked perfectly, as well as made the rack a bit more stable as well. I also got an easy bar, which was something that I didn't have in my previous gym, but it ended up being a great investment because now I can do things such as easy bar preacher curls, reverse curls, and so on. Though one of the things I refunded was a harness for doing neck extensions that I bought because I wanted to see if it felt more consistent than using plates, but it was basically unusable because the velcro strap kept coming loose, so now I'm just back to using plates. But that's pretty much everything in this gym, and while it's not perfect, I honestly really like it and can't imagine how I would have kept working out as consistently here as I do now without it. So anyway, hopefully this video was a bit interesting or educational, and I'll see you soon in another video.